Hey everybody, Prophet here. Welcome back to the channel. Tonight's video, we're going to be looking at the X90J TV from Sony that Phil has purchased to replace the dead TCL Series 4 that died on him midstream. Now, I'm not going to get into the scam Phil pulled on the dents in the chat, basically taking over $900 from them, pocketing it, and then financing the TV on his own. Time is going to tell on that one when he fucks up his finance payments and gets dinged with the 26% interest on it. Phil did overpay on the TV. At the time of purchase, it was $800 on Amazon. By the time all said and done, Phil had spent close to $1,200 on this TV. Now, this TV is in no way a bad TV. It's just a standard LED TV. It's bad for what Phil needs to use it for because it's worse off in specs than his old TCL Series 4. Now, when we get into the specs, I'm going to explain things like HDR, VRR, refresh rate, etc., etc. Now, as a gamer, what do we look for in a display? Let it be on a TV or a gaming monitor. There's actually three different aspects that we look at, and Phil gets these fucked up every single time. You have your refresh rate that Phil gets mixed up with response time. He gets response time mixed up with input latency. Now, in this order, this is what you should be looking for when you look at a display. First off, input latency, the amount of time it takes for the action when you hit a key on your keyboard or your mouse on the controller to appear on the screen. Right? You want a fast input latency. Second, refresh rate. You want 60 hertz or 120 hertz on a TV. If you have HDMI 2.1, natively the TV will support 120 hertz. On a gaming monitor, anything between 60 hertz and 960 hertz is ideal. Now, on a gaming monitor, gaming display for your PC, when you go from 60 hertz to 120 hertz, you're going to notice it big time. After 120 hertz, going from 120 to 240 is really not that noticeable. Sure, it's going to be, you're going to notice the smoothness, right? The issue runs into what type of FPS can your gaming device push to the display, as in terms of refresh rate. Now, what you want ideally, you want your system to be able to produce more frames than your refresh rate. So say you have a 120 hertz screen, you're going to want more than 120 frames per second. The reason why you want to do this is because then your display is is able to gather frame information from your GPU or SoC. Let it be the SoC on the Xbox Series X/S or the PlayStation 5, or from your GPU, your NVIDIA GPU, AMD GPU, or your Intel GPU. The more frames you can push, the better, because those frames are then going to be waiting in the buffer for your display to fetch. If you're getting less frames than your hertz, that's when you start getting tearing on your screen. Most of you will understand what tearing is, right? In response to that as well, you have things like VRR, G-Sync, or AMD FreeSync that will help to smooth out those frames so you don't get tearing. So you get smoother gameplay when you drop lower than the hertz on your monitor. Now, the third aspect that you're looking at is response time. Now, response time isn't really a big issue anymore. It hasn't been for many years because most displays, let it be a TV or a gaming monitor, are going to have anywhere between 1 to 5 milliseconds in response time. Anything over 5 milliseconds is going to start producing ghosting, what we call ghosting. And that's where you have, like, say you have your character running across your screen, right? Or you're playing, let's say you're playing Warzone, okay? And Phil's camping in the washroom, but you're outside and you're hunting everybody else down. When you see somebody move on your screen, anything that has a 5 millisecond response time or higher, you'll see a silhouette behind that character moving. You don't want that. Now, this hasn't been an issue for years because most TVs are going to have a great response time, like 3 milliseconds to 5 milliseconds. It's fine, perfectly fine. Most gaming monitors, you're going to have 1 millisecond response time, so it's not going to be an issue. So response time isn't really looked at anymore, but those are your top three: input latency, refresh rate, response time, in that order. Now, Phil has claimed that refresh rate gives you more frames per second. No, that is false, and we can prove that. Let's bring up World of Warcraft. Now, I have a 100 hertz screen. I'm using the Acer Predator X34. Now, if Phil is correct, because I have 100 hertz, I shouldn't get more than 100 frames per second, right? Now, like I said, you want to be able to produce more frames per second than what your screen will support hertz-wise, right? So if you have 120 hertz, you want to have more than 120 frames per second. I have a 100 hertz screen, so I want more than 100 frames per second. So here at the bottom right, I'm getting 170 frames per second. So it's debunked, right? Hertz doesn't equal more frames. That's just incorrect, okay? Again, the hertz is the amount of time it takes for your screen to display an image. And the more FPS you have, the more frame data is in the pipeline for the display to grab. So it's not waiting on that display information, okay? Now, response time is the amount of time it takes for a pixel to change color, right? And that's what produces your ghosting. If it has to wait to change color, then it's going to produce a silhouette. So those are your three main things. So keep that in mind. Input latency, number one. Refresh rate, number two. Response time, number three. So let's look at the specs on this TV. Now, this TV is a newer model TV. Phil bought the one from 2021. And this TV that Phil bought is the 50-inch. So we're going to be looking at this one right here. Now, this TV supports, of course, HDCP 2.3, which is great on all four HDMI ports. It has Wi-Fi capabilities. Unfortunately, Phil does not support Wi-Fi AC because the modem that Phil is using is back from 2014 and only supports wireless N. Now, this TV also supports eARC, HDMI 2.1, so he has his 4K 120 eARC VRR, and ALLM, which is just low latency mode, which is supported by both the Xbox and PS5. Now, the issue that Phil has is when you look at your TV, we can actually bring that up here. We have the Sony X90J on the left and the TCL Series 4 on the right. Now, on this TV, just want to find the ports. You got to be very careful when you're plugging your TV in. And we'll get into this here in a video really quick. Basically, we're just going to show how Phil plugged in the device wrong and why he's running into issues. Now, this is the back of Phil's TV. Now, you have your HDMI 1, 2, 3, and 4. 3 and 4 are the only ports that are HDMI 2.1. And this port here, which is strange because each HDMI port by default natively should support eARC. For some reason, port number 4 does not. So Phil should have plugged in his switch, his HDMI switch, should have been plugged into port number 3. Phil didn't do this, and we'll look at a video here shortly as to what actually happened. So again, this TV supports HDMI 2.1, 120 Hz, 4K, HDR10+, Dolby Vision. Some marketing ploy because with Dolby Vision, you have to support a minimum of 200,000 to 1 contrast ratio, and you have to support a minimum peak nit brightness of 1000 nits. The Sony X90J doesn't even get to half that, meaning that it can't actually display Dolby Vision. It'll accept the signal, it'll display a picture, but it's not Dolby Vision. Let's just put that out there right now. It is not Dolby Vision. So again, like, it's just your standard TV. It has 4K support, HDR 10+, Dolby Vision, 120 Hz, VRR, eARC, HLG, Phil's claim that it has a built-in digital decoder, again, it's marketing speak. A TV that supports Dolby Atmos, again, you're gonna have to have your room set up where your walls can reflect the proper audio to be able to do it. Most people are not going to have that option. For those of us, if you want Dolby Atmos, Dolby Surround, like you want that surround sound feature, your best bet, a receiver 5.1, which means you're going to have 5 speakers plus a subwoofer minimum, and then you can go up from there: 7.1, 11.1, 13.1, 22.1, right? Sky's the limit, right? That's just the way it works. The simulated surround, again, is 3D surround upscaling, so it's simulated. It's not hardware based. We've been into that in a different video, right? So all Phil's claims are all fucking bullshit, okay? So now what I want to do is let's look at Phil plugging in the TV.
All right. What's holding the pants up? Probably the elastic waist that's in the pants. What do you think? People say the dumbest things. What's holding his pants up? What do you...
The gun too, Phil.
All right. You ready? The first booting. It works. The television works. It turned on. So we've already beaten... We're already one step further than the other TV.
Okay, so this is supposed to be in 1080p, right? This is Phil's so-called 1080p. Okay? It's not in 1080p. Let's just get that out there right now. This is blurry as fuck. And this is on that new camera that was supposedly donated by a fan. But let's just continue.
Excellent. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I am nervous that this TV might end up having things like it shouldn't have anything, by the way, with bubble blow. Oh, whoa. Guys, hold on a second. We have a revolutionary... By the way, thank you everyone contributing. There's a lot of contributions that have come in. I haven't shouted them out because I'm doing this right now. I swear to you, I will shout out contributions by the end of this podcast, okay? But we have a live bubble blow, and for the first time ever, I'm going to blow bubbles in a different camera angle. Are you ready for this? Live bubble blow. Right? Okay. Anyway. So, I'm going to shout out contributions in a little bit. Thank you for those who've contributed. I'm a little nervous. I don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, this TV should have absolutely no connection whatsoever to anything to do with me. All right? At all. It should have no information of mine in it. In addition...
Now, this is the paranoia that we see in Phil, right? He's so scared of everything. That's why he doesn't leave the fucking condo. Unless he has to once a week to get supplies and groceries and shit. Like, Phil, you know about setting shit up, right? Like, yeah, that one guy last year, or when you got your Xbox Series X, was able to use the QR code and lock out your Xbox. That's your fault, Phil, for showing that. Okay? But in no way is there going to be any information that is going to show up here on the TV. So I don't understand why. Like, that's why after Phil did this, that's why I showed my display setup, right? My home theater, because I've got nothing on there. So what? I'm playing a game. Big deal, right? But that's Phil's paranoia in a nutshell.
Even if there's like a QR code or something that pops up on the TV, I have no plans on connecting this TV to the internet anyway. So even if there's some QR code, oh, click here, auto registers all your accounts, and, scan this code, it shouldn't matter because I have no plans to like get this connected to like my internet or whatever. But you always got to be nervous. Do you remember what happened when my Xbox Series X booted up last year? That's exactly what happened. They idiotically, Microsoft, what a boneheaded move. before they even tell you anything, okay, they say, here's a QR code, and this gets you easy access to everything. It's like, what? So someone scanned the code and was trying to register the Xbox.
Yeah, it's for quick setup, Phil. Like a lot of hardware developers have that for quick setup. Scan it in, register your device, done. Right, so you don't have to go through all the menus and set everything up. You can just scan that; it automatically sets it up for you if you're connected to the internet, and away you go. It's for ease of use, Phil. But you're too fucking stupid to understand that.
To them, and then they doxed themselves. They literally had their own like email and shit in it because they're idiotic, and it showed on the screen like, you're a fucking idiot. How dumb can you be? You self-doxing on the internet. You're a complete dunce.
Remember, Phil has publicly registered Burnell Productions, which gives the address, phone number. He used to hand out business cards that had his home address, phone number, and email address on it. So who's the fucking dunce? You're a full-blown fucking retard, Phil.
I just couldn't believe how stupid they were. But anyway, the point I'm making here is I don't really want to fuck around with someone having a chance, right, that they can mess around with this. So what I'm going to do is I am going to turn the camera back to here. I'm going to mess with the settings with you guys live, but I'm not going to show the screen. And I want to show you the screen, but do you really want anyone fucking with my TV? I know I don't. Seriously, you fucking assholes, right? So, all right, let's Just back over here. Let's get this show back on track. I just don't know how dumb these people can be. I'm gonna try to take control of Darkside Phil's Xbox. Oops, I put my bank account online. Oops.
Oops, I registered my company wrong, and now it's publicly available, and everybody has my home address.
Anyway, now it's off. See, I knew this was gonna happen. Now the camera's off. I have to have it go a little lower.
Jesus Christ, I forgot how stupid this fucking setup was.
That's better. I'm centered now, right? It just sucks. I want a fucking room.
No one gives a shit, you fat fuck. And he's away from the
that
fucking
way I have easy
screen
access
again.
to everything when I'm playing. So now my setup has been restored. It was definitely thrown off there a little bit, but now it's been restored. Okay, good. I know I'm pink because, again, the white balance on this camera leaves something very much to be desired.
Yeah, disable the auto settings feature. Debunk that in another video.
Is so nice. The white balance is not. Just adjust it slightly. I mean, I'm not going to get it perfect with natural light. Anyway, all right. Let's take a look. Let's jump through some settings. So here we go. Inglés. United States. I guess I should turn down the volume already. Yeah. United States. No, I don't want to set up Google TV. Get out of here. No, I don't want to connect to a network. Get this the fuck out of here. I'll do that later. I just want the TV to work. Okay. First thing they want you to do... Oh, my God. Whoa, this thing's got a crazy video intro. It showed me going through a colorful tunnel. Then it showed me shooting into space. And now it says Bravia. You guys can't see this because of trolls. It's their fault.
Yeah.
Set up your TV.
Yeah, must be trolls.
Privacy policy. What the fuck? It's a TV. Privacy policy?
This
what
from
are
the
you
business
talking
degree,
about?
right? Doesn't understand the privacy policy. But again, you
It's
break
a fucking
terms of service
TV. What
on
am I
YouTube
agreeing
all the
to?
time, so.
Voice recognition? No.
You can have it change the channel every single time you snort.
Just skip this. Skip all this. Skip it. What it is they're basically making it. They want you, like, if you're a complete fucking idiot, okay, if
Like
you're a real dunce, and you have no idea how to do anything, they're trying to like set everything up automatically, so that way you don't need to do any work yourself. But I don't want to do that. I just want to fucking set it up myself. I don't want to fucking Apple AirPlay. Fuck, man. No, I don't care about that either. Skip, 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 skip. Done. Good Lord. There's a lot of options to skip.
And by not going through them, you fucked up the TV, Phil, and set it up wrong, so...
No, it's exactly right.
That's
It's like
on you.
like they're trying to teach someone who doesn't know anything about the internet how to use a TV or something. And like, what the? Okay, so first of all, inputs. So oddly enough, it has a dedicated port that it's calling PlayStation 5. I don't know why. It's calling it that. That's really weird to me. That there's a dedicated port for PS5, but there.
The reason why there's a dedicated port for the PS5 or any console for that matter is for VRR support and eARC, right? So they have a dedicated port on the TV. And this is where we find out that Phil probably plugged the TV or plugged his switch for his consoles into the wrong port.
There is. That's kind of odd. But this is the port that I want to use. It's off right now. If I turn on the console, see if this works. It should. Oh, wait, it's not. I don't have it plugged in. Duh.
Remember, and Phil was just stating about how the setup and everything are for dunces, and yet he didn't even have it fucking plugged in properly. Dead air, Phil. More dead air. Like, this is peak content creation right here.
So already I have massively offended the makers of my new TV because I plugged in an Xbox Series X before I plugged in a PS5. So they're ripping pissed right now. They're like, what are you doing? Like, what the hell is your problem? Why did you just do that? You're supposed to be plugging in a fucking PlayStation. They even named the port PlayStation. So here we are. I'm on my dashboard. Everything's green. Want to know why everything's green? Because everything is green because
you skipped the setup,
Modern Warfare 2. I can already tell the setting is bad because there's a little bit of input delay just moving around the menu. Yep. So I definitely need to get this to go to game mode. So I need to.
Now, the reason why there was input delay is Phil had frame interpolation on. Now, we're going to see here in a couple seconds that even when he enabled game mode, frame interpolation was still on. Now, what is frame interpolation? If you like your TV looking like a soap opera, right? You know how it's like really, really smooth? That is frame interpolation. And how frame interpolation works is it uses an algorithm, let it be AI or whatever, and it extrapolates the next scene to try to add in frames. Because remember, most TV shows, most movies are filmed in 24 frames per second. When you have a screen that supports 60 FPS or 120 FPS, basically also 60 hertz, 120 hertz, there's going to be frames which can cause judder or skipping. Frame interpolation will allow for like an estimate on what the next scene is going to be, and then it can insert that estimated frame to help smooth the frames out so it's not as juddery, it's not as stuttery. That is frame interpolation. The problem is it adds a massive amount of input latency. Like, you're talking not milliseconds, you're talking seconds of input latency. So out of the bat, Phil plugged his consoles into the wrong port. That's why it has a port specifically labeled PS5 or for gaming. Phil did not go through the setup correctly, did not enable gaming mode, and gaming mode still had frame interpolation enabled. That's just bad menu design, basically. Gaming mode should disable everything like frame interpolation, bullshit like that. That should be eliminated.
Find that. Game mode. Here we are. Oh, immediate difference. Wow. Dramatic difference when you put it to game mode. Now it moves instantly when I touch the D-pad. Should I show you guys this? You want to see this?
No,
oh, wait, but you can't see it? What am I talking about? All you're going to see is the video feed from the console.
Fucking
You're not going to see what
retard.
I'm seeing on my TV. Boy, I'm stupid. That was really dumb. There's no point. All I'm doing is moving around my Xbox menu. Very fascinating, right? Like, you don't care about that. So it looks pretty fast. The response time I'm moving, and the instant I push the D-pad, it's moving on the menu, 0 delay. So that's cool. It does look a little on the yellowish side. to me compared to the previous television. And I'm wondering what I can do. This is picture settings. Picture mode is on game. Yes. It says auto picture mode off. Automatically will set the picture mode. No, I just want it on game all the time. Light sensor. Optimize the brightness according to the ambient light in your room. That's new.
No, it isn't. It's been on TVs for years.
So basically, it's on or off. Right now, if I have it on, it doesn't really do anything. But you know what it'll probably do tonight, like when it's darker in here, maybe? I guess I'll leave it on for now. I don't know how that's really going to affect anything. I know I closed the menu like an idiot. Brightness. The brightness seems good. The brightness seems good, but the tint seems like it's a little yellow. So if I click on color, it's got color and it's got hue. So here at color temperature, expert 1. Warm. Okay. If I turn it to warm, it looks exactly the same that it used to look like with my old TCL. When I put it to warm, it's exactly the same color settings. When I put it to neutral, I'd almost say it's a little off. Neutral looks like it's a little bit more blue than I would like it to be. When I put it to cool, it's definitely too blue. I think warm looks pretty good. No, you know, now neutral's starting to look good. Expert 1 is bad. Like these, it has 2 expert color levels. I don't even know what that means, but they look terrible. They both look yellow. So I want to go with either cool, neutral, or warm. I'm kind of feeling like maybe I want to go with neutral for now.
I thought you said neutral was off, Phil.
I think so.
Look at that.
Ellipsian says these modern
Gin
TVs
brain.
usually have separate
That's gin
HDMI
brain,
inputs
folks.
for 4K and regular. It is. There's 2 4K, and they're both 120 hertz. And I plugged it into one of the 2 that said that. So definitely the console's plugged into the one of the.
Okay, so this is a lie because we know for a fact he has it plugged into the wrong port. Now remember, the 4 ports on the back of the TV, like we just saw, we'll take a look at that again here shortly, all support 4K. They all support 4K. The 2 ports, port number 3 and port number 4, and remember, you should all check this on your TVs as well. There will be specific ports that will support the features of your TV. So on the Sony X90J, ports number 3 and 4 support 4K, 120 Hz VRR. Port 3 only supports eARC. eARC isn't... It's not a game changer for me. It isn't. It doesn't make any sense because I use a receiver. So there's no point in having eARC. I don't see the reason behind it. Only if you're using like a sound bar or something like that would you need eARC support. So it really doesn't matter. Phil could have used either 3 or number 4. He doesn't have it plugged into either of them because it's stated that he wasn't plugged into the correct port for the consoles. So he's bullshitting here. He didn't know what he was doing. He plugged him into the wrong port. Okay, so now let's take a look at the TVs. So on your left, we have the Sony X90J. On your right, you have the old TCL Series 4 from 2018. Now, Phil likes to say he got it in 2017. They didn't have a TCL Series 4 in 2017. The TCL Series 4 only came out in 2018. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at the main features that we need as a gamer when it comes to the TV. Now remember, each TV supports HDR. Questionable, right? The TCL Series 4 had a very, very bad HDR brightness, right? It couldn't even reach the minimum HDR 400 standard, right? You can see on the right, TCL Series 4 was only getting up to like 182 peak nit brightness, which is horrible, right? You can't do HDR on that. So this, even though it supported an HDR signal, it couldn't produce a proper HDR image. The Sony X90J is improved. It sits in between HDR 400 and HDR 600. So it floats around HDR 500. So Phil would get a better picture. would get a better picture. We'll get into that here shortly as well. So it's better. The Sony X90J is better for HDR gaming, brightness and everything, right? Next, we're going to look at is the color gamut. So on the Sony X90J and the TCL Series 4, pretty much the same. The color gamut, again, Dolby Vision, you need to support 99% of DCI P3. You have to support that. Neither TV does it. Again, so Dolby Vision on the X90J, even though it states that it supports it, it can't do Dolby Vision. It's not going to give you an actual true Dolby Vision picture. It'll accept the signal and it will display a picture. It's just not going to be in Dolby Vision. Response time. Okay, so let's get into the nitty gritty here. Now, of course, looking at the Sony X90J versus the TCL Series 4, the response time, the TCL Series 4 had a little bit of ghosting because it was 1.3 milliseconds over what you wanted for, which is 5 milliseconds, what you want for response time. The Sony X90J is about 4 milliseconds. Okay, so it's pretty close to that threshold, right? But it does a better job. So ghosting is not an issue on the Sony X90J. It kind of sort of was on the TCL Series 4, but not by much. It wasn't. It's not going to be a game changer for Phil. Next up, we'll look at variable refresh rate. Now, of course, your variable refresh rate, just like G-Sync, which this is compatible, this also supports AMD FreeSync, as well as VRR. So those type, or it doesn't support VSync, my bad. The TCL Series 4 has no VRR capability because that is HDMI 2.1 native support. The Sony X90J supports it, which means Phil would have a much smoother gameplay if he was able to use VRR. And again, we'll get into that. So VRR is a must. As a gamer, you want a form of VRR. Let it be VRR, G-Sync, or FreeSync on AMD products. You want that. It's going to smooth out your frames, especially when your FPS drops below the hertz of your monitors. So say you have a 60 hertz monitor, you drop below 60 frames per second or lower, you're going to want VRR so you don't get tearing and it keeps your gameplay smooth and jutter free. Now, let's look at input lag. Now, this is where Phil got mixed up, okay? The reason why the X90J has a 9.2 score as opposed to the TCL Series 4 8.7 is because the X90J has more plot points, right? It can do VRR, it can do 120 hertz. So you get a different score. If we look at what Phil games at now, if Phil was gaming at 4K 60 hertz, 18.1 milliseconds on the Sony X90J, 4K 60 hertz on the TCL series, 14.9 milliseconds. Again, 1080p, 18.7 milliseconds on the X90J as opposed to 14.6 milliseconds. So the TCL Series 4 is a much better performer when it comes to gaming as opposed to the X90J. For every about 5 milliseconds of extra input latency, that's a frame of input latency, meaning that Phil is nearly 1 frame slower on his X90J as opposed to the TCL Series 4. So as a gaming screen, because Phil is a competitive gamer, whether he wants to admit it or not, like when he gets into Street Fighter and he starts screaming about lag and it's dropping his inputs and is dropping his frames of animation and they're using lag tactics and blah, blah, blah. And same as in Modern Warfare 2 or in Warzone 2. This is going to perform worse for Phil. Hands down. The X90J is a worse TV for Phil than the TCL Series 4. This is where Phil made the mistake. Phil saw the 9.2 versus the 8.7 and never looked at anything else, not understanding how the plot points worked for the TV. Okay? So again, look at the inputs. Phil should have been plugged into port number 3. He's more than likely plugged into port number 1 or port number 2. Now, as I said with Phil's HDR, if Phil could use HDR, we're going to look at a video now.
Pretty good TV to a great TV. The features that are in this thing I can't use. Can't use VRR, can't use 120 hertz, can't do 4K, can't do HDR. So with the 4 major features that I'm going to get out of this to make it look amazing, not working. Now eventually, if I upgrade my setup, I get a new PC and a new capture device, and I can utilize most, if not all, of those features, now I might be like, holy shit, I'm blown away. But
this is incorrect, okay? So why can Phil not use HDR, VRR, 4K, or 120 hertz? It has nothing to do with Phil's capture card, okay? The capture card does not... It has nothing to do with what's displayed to the TV, okay? The reason why Phil can't support these features is because of the hardware connecting the consoles to the TV. Phil's HDMI cables do not support those features. And we'll look at this. Well, actually, I can bring up a graph here. Let's bring up a graph from Memory Express, because they have an excellent graph which shows the support for HDMI cables and what versions support what features. Now we'll do it through Club 3D. We'll bring up the HDMI 2.1 cable. Okay, so here's your graph for what features are supported. Now, HDR is supported by HDMI 2, okay? It is not supported by HDMI 1.4 or lower, meaning that most likely the cables that Phil is using, or the switch itself, or both, are HDMI 1.4 or lower, right? Now, Phil has never updated any of his hardware for his capture setup, right? Over the years, 14-year content creator making 100K plus a year, doesn't put any money back into the business, just spends it on fucking sweaty man JPEGs, gin, and DoorDash. So this is why Phil can't use features like HDR, like 4K, like 120 hertz, like VRR. So he's had a 4K TV since 2018. He's never gamed in 4K. All right? Now there's another video that we're going to look at here, okay? And this video is going to be basically looking at the next gen, how Phil disables the next gen features on the consoles, and I'll explain what performance mode means.
every time I move up and down, my whole gamepad vibrates. Performance mode on. Now wait a minute. What's performance mode? Performance mode would mean better frame rate, correct?
Yes.
So I would want a better frame
But at
rate,
a
so I should put it to on. Brightness will leave default. Gamma, I guess, will leave default. Motion blur enabled. Turn off film grain. We'll just leave everything else on default for now.
So what is performance mode? Okay. Now, both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series S and X have a quality mode and a performance mode. Now, your quality mode, just like it sounds, is going to give you things like ray tracing, anti-aliasing, 4K, 120 hertz support, VRR, HDR. Now, when you disable quality mode and you enable performance mode, you lose all those features, right? Now, under Callisto Protocol, which is what we're looking at here, again, Phil is supposedly streaming in 1080p 30 because his camera doesn't support 1080p 60. The in Callisto Protocol, you lose ray tracing. It tries to keep the 4K aspect ratio, or not aspect, the resolution, sorry. But what most of the games will do, like say, like, what is it, Horizon Forbidden West, God of War Ragnarok, when you enable performance mode, it enables something called dynamic resolution. Now, what dynamic resolution is that it's kind of like, it's similar to the way NVIDIA DLSS or AMD FSR works on PCs. It will, you can use a lower, say like 1080p, right? So 1920 by 1080. Then it will upscale using an AI algorithm to make it 4K. Now, there is, no matter what you do, you're going to have some image quality degradation when that happens. And there's nothing you can do about that. That's just the way the technology works. NVIDIA's is probably the best form of AI upscaling that's available. But what this does is it lowers your resolution and then tries to upscale it to increase performance. Now, the issue that you see with a lot of consoles like the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox and the Switch is they have hard FPS caps because they have to work within a power envelope. It's not a PC per se where I can get massive amount of frame rates if I buy a 4090, right? Big deal, right? I have that power envelope in my PC. I have a 1500 watt power supply, right? On an Xbox or a PlayStation, you're limited by temperature and you're limited by power. So they have a hard FPS cap of 120 frames per second. Most games are around 60 frames per second, 4K 60. You'll have some games that'll do 4K 120, and then you have games like Batman Arkham Origins that just, or was it Arkham Knights that just came out that Phil played, that had a hard cap on console of 30 frames per second, right? And that's just poor developer. Now, when you enable things like performance mode, you lose all your graphical options. So when Phil starts tuning about how great the graphics are, remember, he's not using 4K, he's not using VRR, he doesn't have HDR running, he doesn't have 120 hertz running. This will also display out on Phil's stream, meaning that if you were to go and play your game on your system and you had all the correct hardware, so you had HDMI 2.0A or B cables or higher HDMI 2.1 cables, you had the support for VRR, you had the support for HDR, your game would look better than what Phil streams out. And again, this has nothing to do with Phil's capture card. This has to do with Phil's cables. And you've all seen that fucking rat's nest of cables in Phil's stream setup. Again, Phil has no idea what he's doing when it comes to his stream. He just wants to be able to plug it in and then beg for money. He doesn't want to soak any money back into his business. Fuck Burnell Productions, right? I need those sweaty Hogan JPEGs. That's what Phil's priority is. Now, how much would it cost for Phil to fix this problem, okay? That's what we're going to look at next. So, I know I've stated this before in prior videos. Phil could replace his capture card, right? And these are the ones that I recommend. Now, Phil is currently using an AverMedia USB capture card. This is the one that I use, the EVGA XR1 Pro capture card, right? The reason why I use it is it has HDMI pass-through, it allows me for 4K 60 FPS, and it also allows for VRR support, meaning that when I'm gaming, I can get VRR support like G-Sync and everything like that through the pass-through, which is excellent. That's what I want. Now, these are expensive. This one's $200 on sale right now. I didn't even pay that. What I paid, like, I think it was like $80 or $100, something like that, when it was on big time sale. Which this capture card is excellent for me. It requires no software. I just plug it in, turn on OBS, and I can adjust all my settings through OBS. It is awesome. Okay. EVGA also makes a smaller one, which is just 1080p 60 capture, but it also allows for pass-through, HDMI pass-through, HDMI for VRR, right? So HDMI in from Phil's Switch or whatever he's got, console he's got plugged into, then it comes out to his TV. Excellent, right? This one's $89.99. This would be perfect for Phil, right? So let's say right now, this is $89.99. This is Canadian, okay? Now, if you go with AverMedia, this is the one that AverMedia currently has. GC311 does the exact same thing. Has HDMI pass-through so that he can plug in to his PC to capture, his console in, and then out to his TV, and then USB to his PC for capture device. So that is perfect, and it has full HD zero lag pass-through. So that will be perfect for Phil. Unfortunately, this is not 4K pass-through, so something like this I wouldn't recommend for Phil, right? So the AverMedia, out of the question. The HD60X from Elgato, again, it doesn't support VRR pass-through. I would not recommend this for Phil because it's not going to support what Phil needs. It's not going to support VRR. It's not going to support 4K 120. Okay, the only ones that are actually going to support that are going to be the EVGA XR1 Lite or the Pro. The Pro is going to be better for Phil because it's going to allow that future proofing. It allows capture of 4K 60 rather than only 1080p 60, right? So his consoles will be better supported. Next up is going to be Phil's 4-port HDMI switch. He's going to need a switch that's going to support HDMI 2.1, which this supports as well. So again, this is $151.99 Canadian. So this would basically, he'd have his consoles plug in 1, 2, 3, 4 with an output to his brand new XR1 Pro, and then out to the TV. So Phil would get full support for VRR, HDMI 2.1, HDR10 Plus. It would support everything for Phil. And then all Phil would need to do is purchase some new HDMI cables that are HDMI 2.1 compatible. The AOC cable, no, he doesn't need those, right? All Phil needs is just a generic HDMI 2.1 cable. Again, now I'm going to give you guys some advice here, like I've done in the prior videos. Try not to go above 3 meters. The issue is once you go above 3 meters, you risk running into issues with signal. The problems you'll run into is once you enable things like HDR or VRR, your screen might just go blank or it might go fuzzy because of HDMI dropout. HDMI 2.1 is kind of worse in that respect compared to HDMI 2.0 A or B. 2.0 A or B, you were allowed to get away with a little bit more. On HDMI 2.1, it is very tough to get a cable above 3 meters that's going to work properly. It's going to be 50-50. There actually is a cable that I want to try, but I can't find it here in Canada. May ask Meth Bear to pick one up for me, and then I'll just e-transfer him some cash for it. And it is called Bullet Train. Now, the thing with the HDMI Bullet Train cables is they come with a special device. Let's see if I can find it here on their site. I want the 48 gigabit AOC cable. This right here. Okay. Now, what this does is it's a supplemental 5-volt USB power adapter. What this will do, when you're going to go with like an AOC cable, when you're going to go with a long HDMI cable, say above 9 meters, right? Especially if you're going to go with things for like 25 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet, 100 feet. I want to try this out because this 5-volt USB HDMI adapter, what this basically does is you plug your HDMI into the one port of the cable, and then the USB, of course, plugs into a USB port either on your TV or on your PC or on your receiver. What this does is that it provides supplemental 5-volt power, which then powers the AOC cable to be able to deliver the full 48 gigabits from an HDMI 2.1 cable. I would really love to try this out on a long cable to see if it works, because I have a 75-foot AOC cable here. As soon as I enable HDR, that cable craps out. It can't do it. It can do 4K 60, 4K 120, but as soon as I enable HDR, it shits the bed and I get HDMI dropout. And that's just the way HDMI works, right? So if you can, try to work within 3 meters. Now these cables are $30 a pop right now on sale. This is Canadian again. So this is all going to cost Phil, let's say $60 for the new capture card. He's going to need 3 cables. This is going to be what? Let's say $20. That's going to be another 60. So it's $120. And then the new switch, which is going to be like another $100, let's say, right? American. So all in all, $200 for Phil, right? $220. Then he gets full capability out of his TV. And you, the viewer of the stream, are going to be able to see the HDR. You're going to be able to see the 4K aspect and everything like that. But is Phil going to do that? No. Phil's priorities are DoorDash, Jin, and the Sweaty Hogan JPEGs. He's not going to fix his setup, right? So when Phil is telling you how good the graphics are, or he's giving a review of the game, remember, Phil is missing the main features of the current generation of consoles, of next-gen capability. He's not gaming in 4K. He's not gaming with HDR. He doesn't have 120 hertz running. He doesn't have VRR running. And the fact that he purchased a TV that has a worse input lag than his old TV, which adds another frame of delay, one whole frame of delay, which is horrible. Phil has seriously fucked up. He overspent on a TV, which he has financed, which when he fucks up his finance payments is going to ding him big time. It's going to give him a worse gaming experience, and he doesn't get any next-gen features. Right? So again, as a gamer, what do we look at in a screen? Input latency, number 1. Number 2, refresh rate. Number 3, response time. When you look at your screens, look at that. Now I had somebody like in the first TV video that we did here 2 months ago when his TV first died, when the TCL first died, somebody posted in the comments that when they walk in to buy a TV, they just buy the best looking TV. No. Do not do that, okay? When you walk into a Best Buy or a Circuit City or Visions or wherever, when you're buying your TVs, all the TVs on display are run in what's called demo mode. And all demo mode is they jack up all the settings to 110%, which will kill the TV within a couple months. Okay, you don't want to do that. You're going to want to look at, does the TV support HDMI 2.1? Do I get 120 hertz? Do I get VRR? Is it going to give me at least a minimum of 600 nits of peak brightness so that my HDR pops? Realistically, if you want Dolby Vision or HDR 10 plus, you're going to want to have 1000 nit brightness with a contrast ratio of 200,000 to 1 or higher. Remember that. You got to have those features, right? Yes, you can sacrifice on some of it if you want. That's your choice. For me, I like to have my games maxed out. I want to have the best quality that I can get. I play all my games at the max graphic quality. Minus ray tracing. Ray tracing shit. 60% performance hit? No thank you. But that's what you're going to want to look at when you're gaming. That's the display you want to look at. HDMI 2.1, VRR, HDR 10 plus. Make sure you have the cables that support it, because cables do matter regardless of what people say. You don't have to break the bank by buying fucking monster cables for a 6-foot monster cable that costs $150. Just go and buy a nice Club 3D cable. Club 3D makes excellent cables. I use them here on all my systems. My NUC upstairs uses it. My home theater uses it. My TV in my bedroom uses it. And my Nano 90 uses it. They're excellent. I've never had an issue with them. They're certified, VESA certified. They work great. So I hope this helps everybody else out. If you're going to be buying a new TV this holiday season, I know in Canada here we have Boxing Day coming up. I ain't buying shit. And speaking of the Christmas break, yes, I will be doing a day stream where I will be rebuilding my PC Titan. I want to make a couple modifications to it. I'm probably going to take it into my shop and do a whole day stream at my shop because I can blow out the system, just clean it all out with the air compressor and everything. Going to replace the thermal paste with some brand new MX6 from Arctic Cooling. May replace the NVMe drive, may make some other alterations for it. I haven't decided here yet. Coming up on December 16th, we are going to be doing a restream of Phil during the night. I know I said in the community post that I was going to be doing a restream on Saturday morning, which I will be doing as well for the Street Fighter 6 beta, as well as Sunday morning, because I'm a massive fighting game fanatic. But Friday night, we are going to be doing a special stream. We're going to have myself, Heather, Lord Thunder will probably show up, as well as DJ Bruno. Meth Bear will be there, but we're also going to have Snood is going to be there. Psycho Dad's going to be there. We're going to try to get one more detractor, hopefully, and we're going to be playing World of Warcraft, Dragonflight, and we're going to be doing Mythic Plus. So I hope to see you all there. Have a good night, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.